Hello, my name is Ken Anthony, Director of Professional Development with the Connecticut After School Network. The network is a partnership of individuals and organizations working to ensure that every Connecticut child and youth will have the opportunity to participate in high-quality, affordable after-school programs. The network mission is dedicated to promoting young people's safety, healthy development, and learning outside the traditional classroom. We do this by providing training and technical assistance to improve program quality, influencing policy on behalf of youth and families, and expanding funding opportunities. Earlier this year, the Governor released his proposed budget, which eliminated state-funded after-school programs. The amount was the entire $4.5 million line item. The network engaged in a multifaceted approach using print media, legislative advocacy, and public testimonials to raise awareness of the dedicated state funding, which was nearing completion of the current grant cycle. Programs which had built school and community capacity and meaningful partnerships over the course of the cycle began to assess the impact and calculate the future feasibility of their programs, including the complete closures of operations for the coming school year. However, the 2013-15 requests for proposals were being drafted by the State Department of Education to allow for a competition if the legislature restored and appropriated the funding. The White-Riley-Peterson Policy Fellowship enabled me to be actively involved in these efforts through the knowledge gained during the process. I was able to make the connections between policy and practice and develop benchmarks for current grantees in collaboration with the State Department of Education Program Manager. These benchmarks are the core of the fellowship policy project I have undertaken. The purpose of this policy plan is to create an amendment to the existing state funding request for proposals that allows programs to meet designated benchmarks to renew their funding in place of submitting a new application for the next grant cycle. This policy change could create multi-year longitudinal data collection of participants and the community to build internal and external capacity that may foster sustainability, as well as creating best practice models and learning communities statewide based on performance benchmarks and quality improvement goals. Conversations with the State Department of Education Program Officer began in late December as the 2013-15 RFP was being drafted. Throughout the process, additional benchmarks such as required attendance and number of weeks programs are required to meet were also adapted through meetings involving the network's executive director, data specialist, director of professional development, alongside the SDE program officer. Initially conceived as a reapplication versus recompetition, grantees that met benchmarks would be able to fill out a streamlined application and submit a quality improvement plan. Elements of these are contained in the final benchmarks, which will be covered later in the presentation. The state-funded after-school programs are on a biennial grant cycle. This biennial funding is a major concern of state-funded after-school programs that are past and current grantees. It has been stated multiple times throughout the three cohorts of grantees that by the time the programs are running smoothly, partnerships are solidified, and the parents come to expect the program, the grant cycle is up, and programs are unable to guarantee operations for the coming school year. This often leads parents to find other after-school options and makes recruitment difficult for the following year. The State Department of Education after-school grants are open to any district in the state that can demonstrate need, which differs from 21st Century Community Learning Centers funding, which requires 40% free or reduced lunch in a district. Analysis of grantee performance over the past 6 years was used in creating the benchmarks. Looking at these data provided information to create reasonable benchmarks that have been attainable in the past. Progress will be measured by the number of grantees in the reapplication pool that are awarded another round of funding in the next cycle. Accountability measures are crafted into the plan in the way of additional materials to be submitted, including a quality improvement plan for the program based on quality advisor input and feedback, as well as a program self-assessment. With the prospect of renewing current grantees that meet benchmarks, research partnerships could be created that measure the longitudinal outcomes of these programs. Based on the research of Vandell et al. 2007, this could translate into positive findings that could be used to justify expansion of the funding. The current legislation for the state-funded after-school grants affects approximately 35 programs that operate in 54 sites. Working with the State Department of Education Program Manager, who oversees the state-funded after-school grants, 7 benchmarks were created that will assess the most recent year's performance data for any applicant currently receiving state after-school grant funding. Assessment will be used in the following 4 areas: data, quality, parent engagement, and adequacy of resources. The data benchmarks were created using information that's currently collected from grantees. These include that program operations meet state guidelines, including the number of weeks, days, and hours that services are provided, They meet the total number of students and a number of students on any given day targeted in the grant proposal, meeting the total number of students attending 60% of program activities, and meeting state guidelines for per-pupil expenditures in the state after-school grants. Additional benchmarks were created in the area of quality and parental engagement. In the quality section, grantees are required to participate in quality improvement activities, including a program self-assessment using the NIOST APT tool and submitting a quality improvement report to demonstrate what efforts they will be taking in the next grant cycle. The seventh benchmark addresses adequacy of resources. Applicants need to provide evidence that the organization has adequate physical health to sustain at least 3 months of after-school programming and has adequate financial controls and policies. The Connecticut State Department of Education Program Manager will complete this section of the application review process, and programs will be able to gain up to at least 30 points in this section based on performance. The Connecticut After School Network has worked with the State Department of Education, the Connecticut General Assembly, the Governor's Office, and the leadership team of the Supporting Student Success Initiative, funded through the National Governors Association, the National Council of State Legislatures, and the Council of Chief State School Officers over the past 18 months, creating a plan to forward after-school and expanded learning policy in Connecticut. The Connecticut After School Network is viewed as the voice for the field in Connecticut. Our reputation with the field at large, governmental agencies, policymakers, funders, and educators allow us to leverage multiple parties for input and feedback. The network is able to convey the concerns of grantees to the State Department of Education through technical assistance, data collection, and professional development. Additionally, being the primary statewide intermediary agency in Connecticut, we're able to articulate concerns from the field to policymakers and state agencies. The network has been an advocate and partner with the State Department of Education to improve the quality of after-school and expanded learning programs and the grants process. As part of this plan, one of the recommendations was to continue to improve existing programs. In the current state, many grantees that successfully meet benchmarks over the 2-year grant cycle are forced to recompete with untested proposals. Additionally, the current level of state funding allows for 1/3 of all applications to be funded, leaving many of these same programs on the losing side of the equation. The current cohort of grantees term expires June 2013. Thus, a short-term victory of this project would be to allow successful grantees meeting benchmarks to submit a reapplication in place of recompeting for funding for the 2013-15 grant cycle. The benchmarking process allows for the first time longitudinal data in what would potentially be a 4-year cycle to be captured. These data would allow for future policy discussions, funding expansion, and professional development opportunities. The revised request for proposals, which includes the benchmark assessments, is currently in the legal department at the State Department of Education. A possible bidders conference may happen in early June 2013, with grantees that meet the criteria awarded up to 30 additional points on their 2013-15 application. Approximately 22 of the 40 current grantees meet the proposed benchmarks. Grants are typically awarded in mid to late summer with an expectation that programs are operational no later than October 2013. In the current form, the grant does not allow for summer programming due to the fiscal year ending June 30th. This could be a further amendment to the RFP in the future to allow for year-round programming as well as advocating for additional funding to support a summer component. I would like to make the following acknowledgments. Dr. Agnes Quinones, the Connecticut State Department of Education Program Manager for After School Grants. Michelle Doucette Cunningham, Executive Director of the Connecticut After School Network. Kathy Stevens from Furman University. Ron Fairchild of the Smarter Learning Group. Terry K. Peterson of the College of Charleston. The Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. The White-Riley-Peterson Policy Fellows of 2012 and 13, my wife Jessica, my son Ken, and my daughter Kayla for their commitment and support of the fellowship process. The White-Riley-Peterson Policy Fellowship has played a critical role in the sustainability of state-funded after-school programs in Connecticut. The benchmarks that were created through this project provide accountability and align with the expectations of the grant funding. The factor of possible grantees that did not meet benchmarks was accounted for in the design. These qualitative components require objectivity in the areas of quality and parental involvement. This project could open new avenues for programming, implementation, partnerships, collaboration, and practice in Connecticut that could allow for research opportunities and replication.